All right, welcome back to the Green Dispensary Marketing GDM Podcast. Always trying to be talking with the best entrepreneurs, learning about the best marketing strategies, learning how to generate marketing ROIs. And it's maybe time to flip a little bit of a narrative. I would actually want to talk to him first, but I'm here talking with somebody who specializes in Weedmaps and Leafly ads. And so as people know who have been following us, it's not something we've been recommending, but when tides shift and we start to notice that ROIs are coming, it might be a good sign to maybe change our narrative a little bit. And so that's hopefully what we're going to be doing today. But as I'm saying, we're going to talk to him. We're going to hear straight from the horse's mouth, straight from the Weedmaps ad guy. We're talking to Kevin Sparks, and he's the CEO of Sparks. And so they don't just specialize in Weedmaps, they also do Leafly, Yelp, and then some other things that we're going to be talking about, some cool paid media strategies. I'm super excited to talk to you, Kevin. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Just trying to enjoy the last bits of this kind of winter rainy weather before it gets super hot out here in Fresno, and it's kind of just 100 degrees every day for a few months. So I think we got like a quarter inch in the last 24 hours, which is really cool. About have to go outside and mow the lawn again for the fifth time in the last 2 weeks. But it's good problems to have. But everything's been going sweet over here, just getting ready for a big 420.
Yeah, likewise. Super excited for a little bit more sun too. Actually, we were talking a little bit beforehand. I'm currently based in Latin America, where it's a little bit more sunny. But where I'm from in Denver, Colorado, there's snow on the ground, and I do not miss that at all, man. You're in California; it's a little bit better over there.
yeah. We've had it snow once in my lifetime, and I think I was in 6th grade, and I had to go to school and miss the whole thing. So I've just been praying that it happens one more time in my life, but.
Well, let's jump into this, Kevin. And so I'm super excited to hear from you. Learn more about these strategies that you got going on, maybe a little bit of secret sauce that you can share with us. But you actually, and so let's start from the beginning here. And so, being a person who specializes in Weedmaps ads, I think one thing that's very unique about you is you actually worked a little bit at Weedmaps. And so do you want to talk about your experience at Weedmaps and how you kind of led to jumping off on your own?
Yeah, absolutely. To take just kind of one step back from that, even before I joined Weedmaps, I worked at Purple Lotus of San Jose, which is an amazing dispensary delivery and brand out in San Jose. And I was running their sales and marketing over there. And I know when I first started, my real goal was let's drive in a lot more sales from kind of these marketplaces, these referral sources. And we would track, back in the day, it was kind of just like tallying everything. Just how'd you hear about us today, and tally it and try to like add that up all at the end of the day. And there was a lot of, they were getting, I can't necessarily share their direct numbers, but they were getting a lot of new business from Weedmaps every single day. And I could see immediately that it was, a powerhouse, but the real value I found out there, which is, I'll be the first person to say it, like a lot of these businesses, what they need to be focusing on is their retention, how they can get people back in their doors. Just getting them through the doors is one part of the equation, but you really do need to focus on bringing them back. So that was a major focus and something I worked closely with the owner, Matt, over there for the first, 3 years. But after a while, I could see how much revenue was being driven in from Weedmaps and how unique of a business it was. When I accepted the offer from Purple Lotus to look into if they were legit or not, I went to Weedmaps and saw they were ranked number 3. I was like, okay, this is a big deal. But then so I left Purple Lotus and joined Weedmaps after that. Spent 4 years over at Weedmaps, climbed the ranks. At the end of my tenure, I was a senior client partner managing some of the biggest enterprise businesses on the platform. And I had helped, kind of over 100 different retailers and brands throughout my tenure over there. And I could see the value of it, but all at the same time, I really missed working on the other side of the table where I could represent these retailers and make it not necessarily about how much they're spending, but how much return we can get and really optimizing the platform. And one thing, ever since I started at Purple Lotus, the big question resonating in my mind is, how much TLC do we need to give to these listings, and how much of an improvement can we get on return if we really give it that attention? And I remember back in the day, it was, I remember managing 4 different menus online by myself, nothing was integrated, and I would just be up till 4 a.m. every day, like plugging in images to their app, and it was just an absolute nightmare to try to manage it. But I knew, the more attention we gave it, the better online experience we could give to these customers. I had an intuition that it would help, but there really wasn't just the data available at the time. At the time, there wasn't even online ordering available on Weedmaps or Leafly, right? It was really just a listing, and you throw some darts at it and throw some ad spend, and you just kind of hope for the best and do everything you can to work with the front desk to be tallying everything off. And it's just like, I think it's making us some good money. I'm not 100% sure. But then after 2 years at Weedmaps, they started releasing data. They enabled online ordering. It really became a platform where it wasn't just set and forget. It was something where you can really give it a lot of attention. There was a lot of different ad products being released, so you can leverage a whole bunch of different funnels and verticals. Promo codes were released, sales pricing, the red strike through. There was featured products. Now you can promote on these cover images at the top. You can run display advertising. And it became something that was really cool and optimizable, but the more advanced it got, the more confusing it became as well for everyone to use. And so, while you're at Weedmaps, there's a lot of good people there. A lot of the great kind of OGs from the business that really got it to where it was today are all back in the business now, which is really cool to see. And they are, I mean, you said it, like a lot of people, have mixed experiences with Weedmaps. And I remember when I was at Purple Lotus, I'll be the first to admit, I had a real bad experience with them when they kind of merged the two San Jose regions into one, and everything got flipped upside down. And I remember there was a moment where I was so upset with them. I was ready to walk into the owner's office at Purple Lotus and say, we should just cancel our spend, because I am so upset with how this was handled. And as I was walking to his office, I realized I can't make an emotional decision right now, even though I'm upset about it.
Love it.
I'm the one responsible for bringing in revenue, and I see the numbers at the end of the day. Like, this needs to be a partnership between the retailer and the marketplace platform. And so I went back to my office and, gave them a call and tried to work it out. And, we figured out something where it's, hey, I was still going to kind of receive less for the same amount I was spending, but I could see in the data, they were making an amazing return from the platform. So I was able to kind of just continue from there, but that's a common experience with a lot of people. And so that's, one reason why I left Weedmaps to start this agency was to be able to give, a premier experience for everyone, so they don't have these negative experiences, that they can optimize the platforms, get the best return possible, and not have to worry about it so much. I think one of my first mottos I put on the website was make more, stress less. And, I try to have great relationships with these marketplaces, because I do truly believe it needs to be a partnership between the two of them and not just this constant competition. But it can be stressful in a lot of times, and it's not set it and forget it. You do need to give it a lot of attention every single day. Like, I have a full staff, a full team that goes in every single day, takes care of the menus, takes care of the promotions, takes care of the graphics, just make sure everything's fine-tuned, and just make sure that really the user gets the most seamless experience possible with as few clicks and as few words as possible. A lot of people try. Every owner I talk to is like, I'm going to give you an essay about how great we are, and I want you to communicate that. It's like we're not going to have that time, to really get these users' attention. We really need to make everything clear, concise, and straight to the point, and make it just a seamless experience. So
yeah, let's see if we can actually dive into that a little bit more, because you're active on LinkedIn, you're active in the cannabis marketing network in the industry, the industry of marketers, and as you've experienced, a lot of people kind of say, Weedmaps sucks, but really, you're kind of living proof. You're right here saying it, that it's not Weedmaps that sucks, it's these people that suck at using Weedmaps. And so I was wondering if we could kind of dive into that a little bit more. And so you were talking about, the UX, the pictures and whatever. What does it take to make sure that you're getting an ROI on Weedmaps?
Yeah, well, anyone with marketing experience knows that the first question anyone asks you when you say you're a marketer is like, so you do social media? right? And it's like, no, there's a lot more to it, right? But anyone who's a real marketer knows that, like, if you're not doing everything right, like if you're at 80% success with your execution, but there's 20% that you're just messing up on completely, you can have a completely failed campaign.
Absolutely.
Right? Like unless you bring everything together in marketing, you could 100% fail. And that's the worst, because the worst thing you can do is invest in marketing, invest in an agency, or just invest it in yourself, put all that money into it, get 80% of the way there, and the whole thing falls apart, right? So now not only did it not work, but you also lost all that investment. And so Weedmaps operates a very similar way, in advertising and in marketing. You want to bring the branding together, the execution, the programming, the creatives. Everything needs to come together and needs to work properly in order for you to get the return you're looking for. So what we see all the time is, people, if you're advertising on Weedmaps, you understand the value of it to a certain extent. And usually you're going to allocate some resources towards it. I think we're one of the first actual agencies to scale this out. But a lot of times, maybe you kind of put a bud tender towards it, or you put an employee you currently already employ to manage these platforms. And a lot of them are very smart, very capable. And we've seen plenty who execute and well and do a great job on these platforms. But it's wild to see how you can have, let's say, great creatives. Let's say you have your graphic designer and they're pumping it out. Let's say you work closely with your rep and you get great pricing and you're buying the right positions. And let's say you even have really good deals, right? Though you're really covering 3 of the core pillars with that. But if you're programming those deals, let's say you have a discount on Steezy, that's kind of been a big one recently, right? And you're using promo codes for it instead of sales pricing, the red strike through, and using the integration, because there's so many POS systems in the industry now that all work differently with their integrations. But if you're leveraging the promo code instead of sales pricing through the POS system, everything might fail, because it comes down to something as minor as you're just leveraging the wrong discount tool, right? Because with these platforms, and it also depends, like that's if you're using a % discount, but if you're using a BOGO, then it flip-flops. Then you want to be using the promo code and not the sales pricing. And then if you're talking Weedmaps versus Leafly, then it becomes a whole nother game, right? Because Leafly will actually, they're different from Weedmaps, where they'll let you schedule as many deals as you want, all for free. Leafly's really cool from that aspect. And then they'll promote on their deals page specific types of deals. So it's always changing. I believe right now they're really promoting bundles and BOGOs. If you go to their deals page, you'll see. And so it really just all comes down to, so that's something we'll work with our clients closely on. It's like, okay, we'll check out what deals you're currently promoting, how we can implement those on these different platforms, and how we're going to segment them out. And it's something where if you're just not programming the deals properly, that can really collapse everything, or any of these pillars that you're not really taking advantage of. It could even just be your menu. You're not verifying products. That's another big thing. It's like I was mentioning at the beginning of the podcast. I remember back in the day when I was plugging in images to every single menu, and you might not have that capability across, if you're carrying over 1,000 SKUs across 4 different platforms, the ability to update, 4,000 SKUs all the time. But it's something where we have a team going in there every single day. Anytime you bring on a new product, we'll verify that product on the menu. And that provides a better user experience. So the customer, they can actually understand what they're looking at and be more incentivized to add that product to their cart and improve their conversion rates. But the really cool thing is that also unlocks funnels to the brand pages who are also paying for advertising on Weedmaps or Leafly. And so now all of a sudden, if there's a user who's going onto Weedmaps, it's still a fragmented market, but there's growing customer loyalty and there's growing branding and presence. So now you can go onto Weedmaps, search for a specific brand. Weedmaps just updated their experience on this. And so now you go to, let's say, Steezy again, and you can find specific products you're looking for, click add to cart, and it'll connect it to the brands, the retailers who have actually verified those products, which it's a manual setup, something you have to do every single day. But if you do it, you can just for free connect and piggyback off the advertising, the ad spend that the brands are spending now. So it's becoming a lot more viable option. This is like the first time in history for Weedmaps where it's ROI is improving instead of just kind of everything's getting more expensive, right? This is actually something where it's becoming a little cheaper now to acquire more customers because it's just a free function you can tap into. It's just something that requires additional labor, additional work. And something you kind of just need to constantly be working on and tapping into.
Yeah, love it. There's a lot to unpack right there. And so, I think you hit the head on the nail though, when you're talking about marketing campaigns. You can do 80% right. And if you do 20% wrong, it can ruin the whole campaign. And so, you were talking about, verifying products every single day. Like, who's going to do that? Whether they're working in a retail store. That's why they need to be working with people like Kevin Sparks. So I wanted to kind of actually dive into a little bit more on your results. And so I was stalking you on LinkedIn. And I found this really cool case study. It might not be your best, but it struck me as really impressive. You're actually currently working with Tropicanna. Correct me if I'm wrong here. And you recently got a 1,300% increase in sales for that client. So I'm curious what steps really worked for them, and how did you do that?
Yeah. Tropicanna is an amazing client. And so it was that was probably our biggest KPI growth metric. I think
it's pretty damn impressive. So yeah,
that's really it is. We have more than doubled their return on ad spend. That specific KPI is for their deal conversions. And so essentially that was another one of those things where they had been on Weedmaps for about a decade and they had been investing heavily. I think there's another LinkedIn influencer who always kind of shouts them out and his success with them, who also coincidentally always talks poorly about Weedmaps. But
it's interesting.
There's surprisingly, they're still one of the biggest investors and closest partners of Weedmaps, and there's a very good reason for that. But with them, it was something where they have an amazing brand. Tropicanna is kind of a premier dispensary in the area. They have an amazing menu and amazing selection. I think they carry all the top selling brands, always at competitive pricing, great customer service, great reviews. But for some reason, their conversions just weren't there. And that ties back into you're doing 80% of it right, but 20% is missing. And just with that 20%, we're just not there. You're just not seeing it. And so that was something for us we identified immediately. It was like, you have pretty good deals. They don't want to be a deal dispensary, right? They want to be a premier, before Purple Lotus, Weedmaps, I also worked at Red Bull, and their major thing is, premium presence, premium branding 24/7. Like, they won't even let you at Red Bull ever take a picture with a can that has any sort of mess. Like, if it's crushed, that's a no-go. Like, you do not do that. And check it out. Anytime it's like an official Red Bull partner, you're always going to see their can holding is pristine, and they're always going to try to get that Red Bull logo pointed at you. And I remember getting flack for my graduation day where we had a Red Bull activation and the Wings team girls came out and we had all the photo ops, and one of the cans just wasn't twisted enough to where the logo was showing, and so they were giving me shit for it, just because of that minor thing. But it's always about a premium presence. And so Tropicanna has a really similar strategy where it's like, we don't want to be the deal shopping location. We want to be the premier dispensary of the area where everyone gets an A1 experience all the time. We have the best brands, best products, best service. That's it, right? And so I completely understood that. And it's like, yeah, we're not here to all of a sudden be a deal shopping location, but we have to be cognizant of the fact that there are a lot of deal shoppers, and you do have deals. We're not going to lean into that. That's the only thing you have, but we do need to make sure, again, that everything is programmed properly and that the deals really resonate for these customers on these marketplaces. And they're actually deals that work with these marketplaces, because that's like another major thing. Like a secret sauce, like I always try to elaborate to everybody, is don't run BOGOs on Weedmaps. Just try your best not to run BOGOs on Weedmaps, but run those all day, every day on Leafly, right? And it depends on which market you're in. It's all about how the platform, the algorithm works, right? And ease of use for these customers. Leafly is really cool about being able to promote BOGOs because you can scale those out indefinitely on Leafly with just unlimited deal promotion, but then it also plugs them into every single product. And then it's really intuitive to just add them to the cart, and then you'll automatically receive the discount at checkout, even just while you're adding it to the cart. It's super intuitive, works great, and it's just scalable. Weedmaps, it doesn't work that way unless you want to give them a whole lot in advertising and ad spend to build out all the different deals and BOGOs. Even then, it's going to be a difficult experience for customers because it's just not an intuitive platform for those types of promotions. You could even program it out to where they get to check out with the BOGO products added to their cart and it'll discount it. But if it's something where you can't really bring awareness to it until checkout, don't expect it to convert at a high rate because you're working backwards from that point. So with Tropicanna, that was a really big thing that we identified was, you do have deals and you actually have really good deals, and you even have this in-house brands that has amazing products and prices. We just need to bring better awareness to these types of deals, organize them in a different way and promote them in a different way. And we really shifted their entire ad spend, their entire strategy, and then updated all their graphics, made sure it was very intuitive for users to understand what was being offered, and then put it at the forefront of these listings. And, pretty much within 30 days, we saw a huge lift in all core key performance indicators. And then I believe it was 3 to 6 months where we saw the 1,200% growth in their deal conversions, which was just astronomical. And it was something they were paying a good amount for already, and they just weren't getting the return for it. So you can imagine if you're paying for something where there's a lot of high value and customer order intent, right, and you're just getting low conversion, if you can just tap into that single vertical, you're going to see huge results immediately. So that was definitely one of my proudest moments with the agency, going into LA, going into Santa Ana, going into a very saturated and competitive market with a dispensary who had been around for a very long time, and really just retool their business, their strategy. And they're still a partner with us today. Love them as a client, love them as a dispensary, and everyone should check them out definitely next time they get a chance in Santa Ana.
Yeah, 100%. And big congrats on that. That's a pretty big success story, and so I just wanted to congratulate you and shout you out for that. And I think you mentioned some pretty interesting things. One, the BOGO thing about not doing that on Weedmaps and not doing that on Leafly. Do you find that the user experience, you were kind of touching upon this, but is it the user experience that's better on Leafly? You mentioned that you could scale better with the free ads or whatever, and then or what would you say? Why no BOGO? Why do that on Leafly? Can you dive into that a little bit more?
Yeah. I mean, I would say it's a similar overall. If you want to just compare the two platforms, which one provides a better user experience? I would say both have a very similar in-game experience if you're optimizing them all appropriately. You just need to get there in different paths, right? So you're going to have to do things a certain way for the optimal experience on Leafly, and same thing with Weedmaps. And so the core function difference between the two, one is Leafly, you have to understand that there's a significant percentage of the users that you're going to get on your listing are strain shoppers. They're looking for specific types of strains. They're looking for even just specific types of brands. Leafly's really led the way with their brand partnerships. Now they can promote them on platform.
So sorry to cut into it for a second here, but they have really good SEO for their strains too. If you search up a strain, odds are that they're number one or number two, despite all the people trying to compete with that. But go ahead, continue. Sorry. Yeah,
no, you're 100% right, and that's really what's helped them scale out over the last, I think it's been 10 years or so. That's really where that was their lane that they picked, and so what's helped them over the last decade is now that's really helped them grow organically in the emerging markets. I think SEO is one of the most powerful ways you can really grow as a business at scale without having to necessarily pay for the ad spend. So, a lot of dispensaries today who aren't taking advantage of SEO, I think they're really, dropping the ball on that one, leaving a lot of money on the table, because it's something where the search engines do the work for you, right? You really just have to program it in properly, make sure you're taking care of it, giving it the right keywords, trust an agency, that can take care of the SEO. But once you can scale that out, it allows the system to really just start bringing business to you. And so that's much more scalable than paying on a per market basis, right? Because it's something with advertising, you're going to have to pay for every location you want to grow. And so that's one thing Leafly took advantage of, was being an SEO based marketplace where they can tap into now anywhere in the United States someone is searching for what they have on their platform, it can automatically funnel into it. While Weedmaps is more of kind of a guerrilla marketing brute force attack. And so they have great presence throughout the United States. But Leafly's really just been able to flourish in these emerging markets. And we're actually seeing, in some states, some markets, they outperform Weedmaps and vice versa. It kind of all depends on where you're at. But, specifically for the BOGOs, there's always multiple levels to why it makes the most sense on these marketplaces. So, the two main reasons I would say, you have to be running BOGOs and at scale on Leafly is, one, Leafly gives you unlimited amount of deals you can schedule. You can literally, if you want to put in the work and take the time and build out the graphics and everything, they even have a cool little AI tool to build out custom graphics for you. It's super basic. We like to do kind of more intricate with templates and all that. But they'll help you scale it out. You can put 1,000 deals on Leafly if you want to.
Damn.
I haven't seen anyone go that crazy. We do have a client right now that I believe we have 30 deals active at any given time. But that's just the scale you can put out onto Leafly. And when these marketplaces, they're not only deal shoppers, but there is a lot of deal shoppers, right? There's a lot of strange shoppers. There's a lot of new customers on there. So you need to take care of each segmentation, each different type of user. And so with Leafly, you can put as many deals as you want out there. One, that helps with your on-listing conversion. Right? The users, once you get them onto your listing, if you can show them, and underneath all the products where there is a BOGO, it has a little red tag. It says, this is a BOGO product. Here's the deal for it. It makes it very intuitive for the user at that point to be like, okay, add, done. Right? Yeah. I understood what's going on. That was a very intuitive offering in line with the individual product. And we were able to just get it added to the cart and BOGO'd out immediately. So that type of experience, and then you can plug in as many deals as you want without paying more. So it's really scalable for you as a retailer. That's going to improve your on-platform listing conversion, which is probably my favorite metric to measure. It's at what rate can you get a listing page visitor to place an order? And that's usually the number one metric we're measuring when we're working with new businesses. What's your conversion rates right now? Because if you look at the core metrics, you're going to see you're getting more than enough sessions, more than enough users, more than enough listing page visitors, but you need to convert them at a high enough rate. And so a lot of people just kind of lean towards, it's just not possible, right? They don't believe the numbers. They don't believe that there was 10,000 sessions on their listing last month. They're like, how much of those are real? I don't know. I don't get it. In reality, if you lean into the idea, maybe those are real customers, you're just not converting at a high enough rate. Think of the potential, because if you can go from a 1.5 visitor to order conversion rate and bring that up to 3%, you can double your return on ad spend overnight. And that's a very easy thing to do in reality, right? And most of our clients are up to over 7% conversion rate after 6 months of working with us. And usually when we tap into new businesses, because again, you need to do 100% of the work. It's not something you can do 80% and expect these great results. A lot of them are hovering around the 1 to 2% conversion rate on these visitor orders. So you imagine, that makes it very simple, very easy without spending any more money on advertising to triple your return on ad spend. And all we're doing is just converting those users at a higher clip. And so that's for the on-platform experience, the on-listing experience and conversion rate, why you'd want to do the BOGOs on Leafly. But the second part of it is that you get actually free advertising on top of that. So one, you can improve your conversion rates of the users on the listing, but two, you can actually bring in more users, bring in more customers to the listing, because now what Leafly does is, since it's not like a paid feature, it really comes with the package. If you go onto leafly.com and go to the deals page, which is one of the most popular pages on these marketplaces, again, it's not all the customers, but a significant percentage. We usually see 50 to 60% of users on these marketplaces are visiting the deals page. You'll get free advertising from it. So if you are offering the right deals, programming them in properly, you'll start ranking on the deal page carousels without spending any money on it, right? So if you can bring in more customers and convert at a higher rate, all for free, right? That's just an absolute no-brainer for why you should really be leveraging these BOGOs bundles on Leafly. Having said that, though, this isn't like a forever strategy, because Leafly is always changing the way that they promote on the deals page and which types of deals that they're always promoting. So that's something you always need to be checking and be aware and be ready to pivot in case that Leafly changes their algorithm or their setup or the ways they're promoting. It's something you'll always want to program all the deals you have into Leafly, but then how you can take advantage of that next level, kind of just free advertising, is one where you really just need to be paying attention to the platform and the homepage and always just checking it out.
Yeah, love it. Love the example, just moving from 1% to 7%, that makes a lot of sense. And I imagine that makes a lot of sense for your prospects too. But it seems like, you run this kind of compliant, shall we say, ad agency. You're not doing like the Google ads. You're not doing the stuff that doesn't allow you on the platform. You're sticking on these platforms that do let you in. You don't have to, deceive anybody or say you're not a cannabis dispensary. You get these ads approved. And I love that. Yeah. I think that's awesome. And so I'm curious, while we're on the topic, what other platforms do you kind of recommend for these paid media strategies?
Yeah. It's something, the landscape is forever changing. I've heard that people are having more success on Meta, but I don't understand how that necessarily works right now, if that's kind of more of an elusive play or what. But I mean, I think if that one ever really becomes unlocked and feasible, I think, that's a great one. It's not one we're helping with right now. Twitter, I haven't really heard of anyone necessarily having success on there, but I know it's one that's unlocked these days. That I think that was kind of one that hit the news a year or two ago. Yelp's a big one that we're helping out with right now, where they don't allow advertising per se right now, but I am in talks with them and their leadership team to become a verified agency partner with them, and to hopefully unlock that for licensed retailers in the near future. TBD on that. Hopefully we can really make some waves there and be able to actually advertise on this platform, because Yelp's another one where people, they think of it as a dinosaur and it's just not something that can really unlock, potential for you. But look at the POS data and you'll see it's there without any optimization, right? And it's a free listing. And for a lot of our clients, right, it's something where we can take over. If you're at a certain level of package with us, we'll just add it in for free, because it's not something that takes too much management, but you do, just like everything else, need to make sure everything is programmed properly and give it at least that minimum TLC to it every day. And there are actually paid features you can enable on Yelp that do have a significant impact. Like, we have one client, so with all this, we created a proprietary dashboard that measures your efficiency metrics from all of these marketplaces. And one of them that we just released to all of our clients is a competitor dashboard for Yelp. So we can actually measure how your competitors are doing on Yelp versus you. And we can measure month over month growth and decline of you as well as the competitors. So we have one client we just beta tested this for, and within the first 3 months, they went from the lowest performing in a sense of total listing page visits, the worst, to the first within 3 months of working with them, just by leveraging these free features. And the first place location that we overtook is a very well-known dispensary chain in SoCal. But they're just not giving any attention to their Yelp. And so they had all this organic traffic. People know them, they're going to the listing. But as soon as our clients started taking advantage of these paid features and making sure that their listing just looked great, so when a user does see it, it's like, oh, I know what I'm looking at. I like what I'm seeing. I can understand the ethos of this business, what they're offering, what their promotions are, bring a little call to action in front of them and convert them to the listing. We were able to see that their growth and their share of voice just shot up, and we overtook all competitors in the area very quickly. So Yelp is another one where it's free. The paid features are like $2, right, a day. So you're looking at maybe $60 a month. but it's really minimal for what you're getting out of it. And if you just look at the POS data and just, I beg of everyone to be asking every new customer, how did you hear about us today? You really have to do that, get that data into your system, and then measure that data, and you will see the true return of these marketplaces. If you're just looking at on-platform sales and not looking at how many people walk into your dispensary and place the order that have heard of you from those marketplaces, you're going to be missing on 5 times the amount of return. And that's amazing. You always hear that, and it's like, I don't know if it's fugazi or real. Check the data, check the reports, measure it, and you will kind of see that. So Yelp's definitely a big one that we've found to be bringing in return. We talked about Weedmaps, Leafly. Some of the social platforms right now, and everything you tapped on.
Yeah, Yelp is a funny one. I just want to throw that out there because it's like the most
it is
counterintuitive place to be focusing on your cannabis, but you make it work. Big congrats there.
And it's like so many issues. Like Yelp is the OG gorilla in the room platform where it's just like, oh my God, everyone hates working with them. Like if you work with Yelp and you have a great relationship with the rep and constant communication, tip my hat to you because you're in the 1% right now. And, the truth is they just, this is how it works with these marketplaces. If there's not enough juice in the squeeze for them, you're just not going to get the level of support you want. Another reason to hire an agency that works with them at scale, right? And is working to become a verified partner with them to really be able to know the ins and outs without having to go to the platform where you're not going to get the support you're looking for. But yeah, Yelp is hysterical to me, but it definitely drives in the revenue. And there's some markets where it's a real powerhouse, but at the rate you have to spend, just don't, the employee doesn't necessarily know what they're doing, right? Managing it, and then you're just fumbling it and you're spending on the labor of the employee. Like I said, my agency will take over your Yelp for nearly free most of the time. And then the newest one that I'm really excited about is Nug. Most people are familiar with NugMD. They still are a powerhouse in terms of medical markets and getting the recommendations out. And so they have a new initiative where they'll allow you to promote your deals for absolutely free, just like Yelp. So it's another one where it's like, doesn't take that much effort, is totally free. Another one where my agency will essentially just add it on for free if you're working with us on any other marketplaces. And why not? If you live in a medical market where there are locations, and what's crazy is they said California is still their biggest market, even though it's recreational, right? Because there are still so many people that need to use the recommendations that do leverage it, whether for medical use, there's tax incentives, there's a whole bunch of reasons, but it's still a strong driver of business for them. And this isn't something where it's like, let's get, your deal on NugMD and now you're going to make $1 million extra a month, right? Like that's not what's going to happen. But anytime you can tap into more new business with hardly any cost, do it yourself. And if you have like someone who can do it in their free time, it is totally free, right? Like everyone should at least be promoting on there. But I would recommend, just have someone who understands the platform's ins and outs and can manage it properly every day to make sure it's always up there. Because the worst thing that can happen is you think you're on the platform advertising and then you check it out after a month or two and your ad's gone or it's broken and you just haven't been collecting any revenue or referrals that entire time. And so that's another big thing I always preach with our agency is when you start bringing all these different marketplaces together and you're trying to manage them all at once, there's going to be a bug probably every week on one of these marketplaces. And there's probably no way you have to catch that unless you're just like looking and placing orders on your listings and just diving into the dirty details of like everything that goes on. With us, we have a dashboard that's built out to identify these issues, right? We have a monthly summary page, we have daily sales page, and then we have core KPI pages to where we can see how are your deals performing, how are your promo codes performing, how's your engagement, how are your listing page views, how are your cancels, what are the reasons for these cancels, how are your verifications, how is your sales pricing, right? We have individual dashboards for all these things. And then on the monthly summary, we have the core KPI metrics. So we can just be measuring things every single day. Is anything starting to fall? Yes, why? And then we dig into the sub dashboard, the micro dashboard of that KPI, look deeper into the details. We can break it down by each individual listing as well. So you're not just looking at a macro level. We can dive into everything in a more micro level. And it really helps just make sure that my main focus, goal, and vision is to allow the businesses to focus on their business, right? This is the first thing I learned when I was at Purple Lotus. You should not be spending all your time on these marketplaces.
100%. Yep.
They're valuable networks for you. They bring in business. They bring in lifetime value. Those customers are sticky. I'll battle anyone on that metric, right? A lot of people like to say, oh, you're just getting a one-time sale. No, these are customers who can turn into lifetime customers, and the lifetime value of these customers is very valuable, and there is a long lifetime tail to them. The people we found who've been advertising on these marketplaces the longest have seen the most value from it. So you do really want to tap into it early and often. But yeah, it's something where if you're just not giving the TLC to these businesses, you're just not taking care of them. It's something that can spiral out of control really quickly. So,
lots of great stuff in there. I think one point that you made that I kind of want to dive in a little bit more is the topic of retention that you were talking about, how a customer that goes, whether it be through Weedmaps, Leafly, Yelp, or whatever, it's not necessarily just a one-time customer. And so, other people, authorities in the niche would give you this data that 50% of new customers, they aren't going to come back. And so I'm kind of curious what you think about that. And also, what would you say to the people who kind of see platforms like Weedmaps, Leafly, Yelp, whatever, as platforms that own your customer as opposed to vice versa?
Yeah, that's my favorite narrative. I love just looking on LinkedIn and it's gone out of control.
I'm partially guilty of that. I'm not going to act like I'm not. So,
I mean, it's captivating, man. It really rolls off the tongue, and it sounds great. And to that metric, you say like 50% are retained. Like I'd say it's probably even worse. I remember first tapping into the data and we're like at 30% retention rate from these new customers, right? That's not a marketplace issue. That's just generally speaking, you live in a market that has competitors. And so that's just what's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
The value of these marketplace customers, right, is just as valuable as any other vertical, right? They are, like, there's a reason why in a lot of markets, when you type in for a dispensary near me, there are marketplaces searching at the top, or marketplace organic results at the top, because a lot of customers do want to peruse through their options and they'll test it out. So you're going to have relatively low retention rates just across the board. I think everyone deals with that issue. But in terms of own the customer. I had one client bring that directly to me one day while we were spending a lot on Weedmaps, and they were like, we're thinking of divesting from Weedmaps. We really want to own the customer. And I was like, can you tell me what that means? And he was like, we get their email. I was like, you got to understand, like, it's a very catchy slogan, right? But how do you not own these customers from these marketplaces, right? If it is a new customer that orders through your system, one, you should be capturing their email, capturing their 100%, phone number
100%
through your internal systems, right? Like I remember we had a King Kong joint giveaway, pre-rec days, right? When you had a big, turkey bag coming in, and we had the Gorilla Glue, and we would do a giveaway at the front desk, and you just had to sign up sign up your email and text your phone number, and as long as you were signed up for that program, you would be entered into this raffle pretty much every day. And we had 100% or like 99% retention rate from our email and text campaigns, but we still had to bring them in from these marketplaces.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's something to me where I don't, and maybe you could explain it to me a little bit better as well, or your kind of how you see it for owning your customer. But I think you hit the nail. You're collecting their email, you're collecting their phone number, you're collecting the possibility to retarget them, reach back out to them, and have them come back into the store. Otherwise, what's the point? And I think you made a really great point. So cool. Maybe they're not going to send you over their email, their phone number, but you can still do that with your internal systems. Exactly, and you should be doing that. It's the narrative also always comes down to what blows my mind is it's really devolved into this conversation of don't do it. You just shouldn't be on Weedmaps because you don't own it. It's like, so you're telling me there's this website where there is thousands of new customers every single day in your market that want to use that platform to find where they should go. And because you don't get their email, or you don't, quote unquote, own that business, you just shouldn't be on the platform and just forget about it. Like, that's eerily similar to a decade ago when Amazon was first getting started, and everyone was like, lower margins, not good for you, just don't do it, right? And then the businesses who just said, okay, we're just not going to be on Amazon, now just aren't getting any of the sales. They don't have any reviews. They have to start from scratch and start from the bottom, right? These marketplaces, people want to use them. And even though it's not the only source, like, I think first and foremost, everyone should invest in Google, to search engine optimization, to building their website data, and building their on-platform optimization on their own website, where they, quote unquote, own the customer, right? You own your website, really. But I mean, let's be honest, from these marketplaces, they're going to find you on the marketplace because they want to go somewhere where they can look at their options. Not all customers go that path. A lot are just going to go right from Google onto your website through your search engine optimization. That's why I'm the biggest advocate of take care of both. Most of our clients that we work with, when we tap into their POS data, there's a top 3 funnel source, right? There's 3 main sources for new business and returning business. And that's what you always have to remember as well. Yeah, there are shoppers who want to go back to this marketplace and place their order again. And so they're returning customers on top of new customers. But the big 3, it's going to be, and this can be in any particular order, right? So it's Google is going to be your bread and butter. And that's one that's really, it's scalable. It's, you just have to invest in kind of the agency or the business who's going to optimize it for you, but then you don't necessarily have to pay for advertising on top of it. There are some options. There's word of mouth referral, right? And then there's your marketplaces, which predominantly is driven by a single entity of Weedmaps or Leafly, depending on your market. And then Yelp, Leafly, I mean, sometimes it's Weedmaps, your billboards, you'll have other kind of top 10s. But the big 3 is going to be one of those marketplaces, Google, and referral, word of mouth. Funny thing is, when you invest more in Google and Weedmaps, Leafly, Yelp, your word of mouth referrals also goes up. So usually when we tap into these POS data, we see, oh, you invested more heavily in Google this month or in Weedmaps, Leafly. Not only did that platform grow, but also your word of mouth referrals. And so this all ties in together. So my biggest thing is always like, we need to be working together with these different platforms and make sure that you get a robust multi-funnel approach, instead of just going online and saying, Google is the best, Weedmaps is the worst, do Google, not Weedmaps, right? Like, okay, well, tell that to my client, who's bringing in millions of dollars every year from these platforms, from both of those, right? And if you were to tell them to X one of those, they would laugh you out of the building, right? It's something where you really need to take care of both funnels. Those can be your customers. I've looked at enough retailers throughout the United States to be able to confidently tell you that you can get a customer from Weedmaps, from Leafly, from Yelp, bring them into your system, and they can be a lifetime customer that you can own, that you can get their info, that you can retarget, that you can advertise to. And sure, some of them are going to go, they understand the marketplace and they'll go back if they ever get a bad experience from you, or they just want to check out their other options, which is why it's important to continue advertising on these platforms. It's the same reason you see Carl's Jr., McDonald's, they're always re-upping on their billboards and advertising. Coca-Cola is always at the forefront because you always need to maintain your awareness. Competition is going to continue to grow in your markets. You always need to stay top of mind and continue on these platforms. The same thing works for Google. It's not something where you can just set it up once and forget about it. You always need to be giving it the attention, always need to be optimizing. That in and of itself is a marketplace where your competitors are always going to be nipping at your toes. And so that's another thing that cracks me up. It's like, you don't think there's competition on Google? There's a lot of competition on Google. You better be giving it attention. You better always be giving it attention and pushing it and trying to keep it at the top of the rankings. And if you can be the top ranking dispensary on the Google business results, on the organic results, and on these marketplaces, you can build a really robust new and returning business funnel that can have amazing return on ad spend for you. and just serves as the foundation for your business to continue to grow over time. And then as long as you have good teams managing those platforms, you can focus on your business and make sure you give them the best experience, so that retention rate goes from 30, 50% to 60, 70, or however high you can get it, really. But you really want to, you focus on your business, the experience, the retention, right? And then take advantage of all the profitable funnels you have at your disposal. So I mean, kind of a long answer, to that conversation.
This is awesome. This has actually been really informative. I think you and people like you are actually causing a new trend. You're disrupting the industry by kind of, making it viable to promote the idea of Weedmaps ads, Leafly ads again.
Yes.
And so great work doing that. But, we're running out of questions here because, we're already cutting over an hour here. But if we can kind of do 4 more questions, I got one more big one, and then 3 kind of just short little fun ones. But for those of the dispensary owners who are competing, you said you're working with a big old MSO in Southern California. For people who are having those sorts of people as their competitors, and they're also lining up indirectly against people like Kevin Sparks and Sparks Agency. And so what would be the one thing you would recommend to these people that are mom and pop stores, maybe don't have quite enough money to invest yet, even though maybe we'll get an ROI anyways? What's the one thing that you would recommend them to do on Weedmaps and Leafly?
Yeah. What's interesting, this is something I learned at the very beginning of my tenure in cannabis from the owner of Purple Lotus. The advantage you have as a mom and pop shop is your ability to move fast.
Hell yeah. Yep.
It's your ability to understand your market and make moves much quicker than your competitors. So while a lot of these major MSOs, they have to go through all these loops, all these approval processes, it can take them, I've worked with some where it's like, oh, you want to run this promotion? We'll get it started in 2 months, right? For you have the ability to see. It's great when you have a dashboard and data to measure what's actually going on, because I will be the first to say your intuition is only right half the time, especially in this industry, right? You really want to be a data-driven business. That's very important, from the largest businesses to the smallest mom and pops. But if you can be measuring how things are working for you, you can be very agile with your approach, and you can test out a whole bunch of different approaches and see which one works best for you. And what I love to do, like especially when I was at Purple Lotus, I would let these big businesses spend all this money on research and A/B tests. You tell me, you show me what's working best out in the business, and then I'm going to flip the switch and turn that on myself immediately. And then we're going to be following all the other competitors as well. And as soon as we see another promotion campaign that's working better, you can immediately just tap into that one as well. And so I would say that's like easily the biggest advantage that these small mom and pop shops have, is just their ability to maneuver quickly at the drop of a dime, and just understand, as long as you're measuring the data and the return, what's actually working. Now, another big thing I would say just on top of that, invest in creatives, invest in graphics. Like, it's something my agency, we fully take care of, but if it's something, you're just kind of getting started, and for all your other verticals, like, take the time. When I first hired my first graphic designer, when I first started, I was doing it all myself. But when I first started to invest in scaling out and hiring more designers, now we have 2 on staff. I went through 100 different applicants. I put a lot of time and investment into finding the right person. And that was something that I think was the best hire that I've made since starting this agency. Because there's a lot of things you can do through your normal team, your management team, people you already have on staff. Maybe you're just not quite ready to hire an agency to help out with it. There's a lot of programming you can do all yourself, whether it's owner operator, you're at that scale, or you maybe have a couple employees they're helping out with. But the graphics is something that I cannot stress enough. You're going to need to hire support more than likely, and a really well-designed creative that can really encapsulate your brand, your promotion, everything you're doing very clear and concisely, and presented at a very high quality, has such a big impact on your ability to convert. And I see too often just small businesses just don't quite make that investment, or they'll find someone who can do it, but really, just to start, even find a contractor. Hey, we have so many hours available per week. We can pay at this per hour basis, and just go through your options. I went to Reddit to find mine, which is funny. There's a really cool subreddit where you can post for hire and just post, job openings. And yeah, I had over 100 applicants come through, and really amazing employees, potential contractors throughout the United States that can really help out.
That's a good idea.
So, yeah, I never thought it would work that well, but yeah, we had so many people come in and really amazing applicants. And so I found one in Canada, funny enough, and she's just been the best, and probably the best investment that I've made. So between those two things, like your just ability to move fast and move with the trends, and then just really invest into some type of design, so you can just, every owner understands how well their brand is and how much of a differentiator they have, but your ability to present that to the world is really limited depending on how well you can present that through graphics. So that's just another big thing that I would say. Just put that little investment into it. Make sure that you're presenting your value out into the world at the premium level that your business represents.
Yeah, I love it. Well, once again, this is Kevin Sparks. He represents Sparks. It's a company that helps you with your Weedmaps and Leafly ads. We addressed the common criticisms. We talked about how people were over-investing in Weedmaps and getting an ROI. He's offering a solution to that. He has systems and proven processes, and he has results and case studies. And we've also addressed, Weedmaps owed my customers. Well, guess what? You can also have internal systems that bring in these emails and phone numbers. And so thank you, Kevin, for coming on, sharing just a little bit of your knowledge. This has been really informative. I've learned a lot. You're going to help me change the narrative and help the broader industry change the narrative. And, go back to these platforms that are working, that are generating ROIs and helping dispensary owners. I think that's what's most important at the end of the day.
100%.
A few more questions for you, Ryan, Kevin. These are kind of fun. You don't have to answer them if you don't want to, but I'm curious, first of all, can you tell me about the first time you tried cannabis? Mm-hmm. Let's hear the story.
Yeah. I was shout out my sister. I really hope she's
what's your sister's name?
Holly.
Shout out.
She's living in Philly right now. She it was high school, I believe, sophomore year. We were hanging out at her friend's house, and they were passing around a joint, and I kind of gave her the look. I was like, "We doing this?" And she was like, "Go ahead, here it is. Here's what to do. Take a quick puff, pass it around." And then after I did that, they were like, "All right, now just go sit over there and just sit down for a second, see how it goes." And then I'm talking to one of her friends, and then before I know it, his face was starting to just move around a little bit. And it was so new to me. I was so young. I didn't know what to expect, but I was like, "You just kind of starting to look like Iron Man to me, man." And we just started laughing hysterically for a good 5 to 10 minutes. And that was pretty much my first experience. Like, just real quick talk, but it was a great experience.
How old were you, if you don't mind sharing?
I think you can do the math on it. Not sure.
Old enough, shall we say?
Yeah. It was a good time.
So these days, what's your favorite product or way to consume these days? Are you a joints guy? Do you like the rosin? Do you like the edibles? What do you think?
Yeah, I still, my favorite really is a joint. I hate to say it honestly, but nothing ever really hits quite like a blunt or a backwood, but I don't recommend that. I try to stay away from it. Usually my go-to is just kind of a bong or a piece, just a water bong. Me and a couple of my good friends, we all bought the same kind of like Fabergé egg design from, some online site. And so we all kind of use that one. That's the main go-to, but I stay away from dabs. I used to be into them, but it's this big process, and they're great, but I'm getting a little older now, and those can kind of really, really nail you. And 100%. Then I was growing for a time and was getting pretty good at it, and it was producing some really good product. And then from there, I started really getting into edibles and cooking my own. And so edibles are always tight. I love just, I have some Kivas right now that I'll just kind of pop every now and then, some of their their chocolate, like espresso ones are always like the go-to OG ones. But yeah, I mean, I really dabble just kind of whatever it is. There's nothing that beats like just rolling up a joint and going outside. But
yeah, love it. One more question for you, Kevin. Sorry for going over an hour here, but I definitely respect your time. So this is the last one. Looking into your crystal ball, knowing what you know, what you see over there at Sparks, being Kevin Sparks, what is the future of the cannabis industry for the next 4 to 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, that's the $1 million question, right? I think the answer, like, what's the truth? Every 5 years you ask about in the next 5 years. I think the truth of what ends up happening is a moving goalpost that's always pivoting, right? So I think we can make a very well-educated guess right now, and then the landscape is so constantly changing that educated great guess might be completely wrong at the end of the day, right? We really don't know what's going to happen federally right now with the changes in administration, everything going on. Like, it's so up in the air, anything could happen. The one thing I had felt in the last 10 years that we were really making a lot of progress and movement in the right direction. And then the last 2 years have felt like it's slowed down a little bit. And there's just not been so much advocacy for us in the greater landscape. And it's reversed a little bit. I think there's just been some loud people recently, talking against it and speaking their mind, which is fine. But it's definitely slowed down progress. I think the direction we're heading, though, is as more legislation is written, as it becomes more normalized, as more counties, states become more confident in the legislation that has been written and finds the one that is right for them, we're going to see the pace of licenses being handed out continue to grow. Now, at what rate is that going to happen? I couldn't tell you, right? But I have seen that, when we were first getting started with this, you really have to write the legislation from scratch, and each county has to do it their own way. And we saw so many go through just bad experiences. Like, I remember living in San Jose when they gave out over 100 licenses, and the city was like, whoops, right? That was a little bit too much for them. And so they immediately scaled that back, and they went about it in a very interesting way. Everything needed to be kind of vertically integrated, and that didn't end up going through. But I think there's certain ways that these counties, these cities, want to do it in their own way, but they need that infrastructure of legislation to be able to build off of. And so I think as it continues to grow in different states, municipalities, there's different versions and variations. It makes it easier for new and emerging locations to then piggyback off that. And hopefully it's something that, they can continue to build off of each other and continue to scale out. I think there will only be more licenses handed out, more growth. I think as these even locations who have approved licenses continue to become more comfortable with the industry, there's a lot of reports that always come out about how, it reduces the size of the black market, right? It reduces the amount of unlicensed product that gets to children, right? I think people need to understand that cannabis is around, and it's going to stay around. And there's a lot of medical and it's predominantly a recreational market. Like, let's not get it twisted. But it, just like with alcohol, right? It's something that just needs to be controlled. And I think when you have those controls in place, it really helps the community to be able to grow and to take care of one another, and to be able to do it in a very safe and effective way. And so I think as more these locations who have started this trend become more comfortable with it, we'll see those locations grow. I think we'll see more new locations grow at a faster scale, hopefully exponentially over time as it becomes more just less fragmented and more organized. And I see really the industry continuing to move in that direction and continue to grow. The question to me is kind of at what pace. And then federally speaking is kind of like the major one in terms of profitability. We need 280E, to be resolved. There's a whole lot of moving pieces, always going down right now. But I still have high hopes really for the industry and for us to continue to move forward. I just really hope we can see the mom and pop shops really continue to stay agile and continue to be successful in the business and maintain profitability, and not just kind of get wiped out by some of the major operators and, big tobacco, big alcohol, big pharma coming into the business. And that's what a lot of people have concerns of right now, is them kind of just coming in and consolidating as soon as everyone's collapsed, because they're all just getting strangled by the tax rates. So I really hope that gets taken care of, and that people continue to fight the good fight to get that in the right direction so these businesses can be successful, and that it's something where everyone, can kind of have their own piece of the pie instead of all just going in one direction.
Yeah, 100%. This is, once again, Kevin Sparks. He represents a company called Sparks. They can handle your Weedmaps, Leafly, paid media in a compliant manner. Help you get some ROIs. Thanks so much for coming on, Kevin. I learned a lot. I'm sure other people listening have learned a lot, and hopefully this just flips the narrative and kind of gets more people interested back in these Weedmaps ads, especially if they're going to get an ROI. So thanks again. Let's look out for some fresh ways to collaborate in the future. But 100%. Yeah. Super excited to chat with you, or super excited that we had that chat, and wish you all the best.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Sam. It's really appreciate the opportunity to kind of speak about my agency, what we're doing here. I really respect everything you got going on. Continue to fight the good fight and get the word out. I respect everything you're doing. So yeah, I just appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to working with you more in the future.
Likewise. Hey, Sam here. Thanks again for listening to the GDM Podcast. So we do websites and SEO for cannabis brands and operators, and we do things a little bit differently here at GDM, where we can promise results within weeks rather than months. And so if you're looking to sell more ounces, bongs, and other premium products, start selling some more weed, get in touch with us at Green Dispensary Marketing to learn more. Thanks again for listening, and hope you have a great day.